We want to start by telling you something about yourself that you may have forgotten. Is that okay? All right. So here it is. Ready? You are wonderful. And now we'd like you to amplify that by pointing to the person next to you, make eye contact, point to them with your finger. This is finger pointing, okay. And we want to all do it at the same time, all right? Pick the partner, look them in the eye, point, and let's go. You are wonderful. And now point to yourself and say, I am wonderful. And now point to all of us and say, we are wonderful. And that's the truth. Say it. That's the truth. And we do this exercise. It's a great warm-up exercise, but it's also the truth. That when all of us were little, we lived in a technicolor world. And life was wonderful, and we had the capacity for amazement. But something happened, and we lost that. And Helen and I believe that what was lost was the experience of full aliveness, and that's what we're looking for. We want it again. So our view is that we live in an interconnecting, interactive universe in which everything there is in the universe is connecting, and that's the core word that we use. And we've been studying for decades now, how come people don't feel connected and connecting? And what we discovered is there's a fundamental thing that happens, that all human beings, we've picked this up in the clinic, and we also find it's true in all the ecosystems we've worked in. There is an objection to difference, and the objection to difference has something to do with the fact that we're not connecting. So there's a paradox there. And you can't get to connecting by objecting to difference, so that you have to do something else. So objecting to difference produces a polarization, and when what we would like to do is produce connecting. And Helen's going to talk about this in just a moment. But our primary discovery was about talking. We thought it was about helping people solve problems, but we discovered it's about talking. And that talking is the most dangerous thing most people do. Listening is the scariest thing and the most infrequent, because if you listen, you may hear something that dissipates your own view of how the universe works. But most people can't talk about their difference or about their needs without going into polarization.
So we are excited to share with others the fact that there's a new relational science, a new technology that has never existed in the world before. Marriage therapy has been very murky in the past, and people have longed to get along, but they just don't know how. Something breaks down. But in this new relational science, we emphasize that conflict isn't a bad thing in the relationship. We phrase it, conflict is growth trying to happen. If you hold the conflict right, you'll both discover something new and transformative about each other and the relationship. And the problem with conflict is that people wait too long. John Gottman, anyone heard of him? Top marriage researcher in the country. A lot of you raised your hands. He says, if you have a pain in your chest, the average time it takes to pick up the phone and call 911 is 4 hours. If you have a pain in your relationship and your heart's breaking, the average time it takes to pick up the phone and call the doctor is 7 years. People wait too long. And some of that reason, and then the problem's so big it's harder to deal with. The reason people wait probably is they don't know that there's something that can really help. And now we're so glad to share that fact. It's so good now that we work with someone who says we could end all divorce on the planet. And his thought is that, boy, when a couple applies for a marriage license, shouldn't it be like a driver's license? I mean, shouldn't you have to, like, read a manual and take a test and maybe show a little proficiency before you get your license and make the most important decision of your life? So, and also, it's so simple. This stuff can be taught in grade school now and is beginning to be taught in grade school. And if we're raised learning this technology of relationship, we would really have a transformed, family, workplace, world. So basically, Harville and I were dating, and I was divorced, he was divorced, and I said, Harville, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to do with your life? And he said, I'm so curious, why do couples fight? And he began to share some of his thoughts. I said, tell me, what are your thoughts? What are they? As they came out, after dating for a while, I proposed, and he agreed to marry me. And this book got written, and when it came out in the first 2 months, when it came out, I thought, who's going to buy a book by a man named Harville? I was really worried about that, but apparently Oprah read it, and then the studio called and said, we'd like him on the show. So she took his show and submitted it to the Emmy committee, and that show won Oprah her first Emmy. So she had him on about 15 times, and pretty soon the book was in 60 languages, and it's a system, a therapy system called Imago, and there are 2,500 Imago therapists who've gotten training in 37 countries. So we know this stuff works. We just were talking with some of the other relationship scientists, and because we were all saying this stuff you shouldn't have to pay for therapy, it's gotten so simple. So we will tell you a little bit later about the fact that these therapists said, try to do this in one city, and we're disseminating this information in Dallas. And if it works in Dallas, it's going to go global. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we're now going to we're going to show you the technology of safe conversation, and then we're going to ask you to sit next to someone and do what we do and learn this.
Maybe
practice.
You can pair up with the person with whom you exchanged wonder. So when Helen and I were dating, she mentioned that early in our relationship, we discovered that we were both very intense people, positively and negatively. And one day we're having one of our negative intensities in her living room, and Helen said, stop. Just one of us talk, and the other one listen. And so that was sort of broke the cycle, and we did, and one of us talked, the other one listened. And we found that it regulated us in a way that was surprising. And I was in the clinic at that time and began to help couples learn to talk in a different way, sort of as a result of that, and began to study talking, and that most people talk in monologues or parallel monologues. I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk. We don't talk. We don't interface. And what we wanted to do is change. That's a vertical way of talking. We wanted to change that vertical to lateral. And we developed this process called dialogue, which we rebrand in Dallas called Safe Conversation. We want to show you briefly what the structure of that looks like, and to say that what we discovered is that conversations that have a structure and a process tend to produce safety and connecting. Conversations that are random and don't have a process tend to sometimes produce safety and connecting, but generally produce polarization and chaos. So that it's some simple processes can transform conversations, and we can get back a sense of connecting, which we think is so indigenous to our nature that that's what we really want. So safe conversation is the foundational tool, and it's got us, here's the structure I was talking about. Fundamentally, it's to learn the practice of mirroring. And let me see if I got it. As you can see, we put in some sentence stems. Let me see if I got what you said. Then the second thing that's important is accuracy check. In research on listening, there's a 13% accuracy rate in what most people hear, 87% distortion rate. So it's really important that you say to somebody who's talking to you, let me mirror that back. Let me see if I got that. Did I get it? And then the other thing that most people don't do is say, is there more about that? They usually say, well, are you done? And now it's my turn to talk. And then we go through validation, which is to see the sense that they're making and to empathy to reflect back the feelings. Now, that's a structured conversation. You can do it with just mirroring. You can do validation or empathy. Helen and I want to, we're going to do like a 5-minute demo of that, and then we're going to ask you to do that. One of the things that we discovered in great conversations is nuance, that it has very little to do with what is big, but has to do with small, and one of those is eye contact. Many people walk around with hard eyeballs, and their pupils are small, and that's what we call the glare. And you remember, have you seen glares around? You can look at somebody's face, and you can say, person is closed, pupils are small, you can read that. So what we help people do is identify the hardness of and the smallness of the pupil, hardness of the eyes, and switch it to the gaze. This is the kind of face you want to look at while you're talking, where there's receptivity, where the pupils are large, and you know that what you're saying is being received. And so we also help people regulate the flow. That if somebody's talking to you and you stop listening and you know you're being flooded with what they're saying, you just raise your hand and say, can you hold on a minute? Let me mirror back what I'm hearing so far. Just regulate your own input instead of getting over-flooded and saying, I can't listen anymore, or reacting to it. So here's what the Mirror of an Appreciation looks like as a conversation. And this is what Helen and I are going to do. So now we've decided that we're just going to do a one-way because of the constraints on time here. And the one-way will be that Helen is going to send me some information, and I'm going to respond on the receiver side. She'll be the sender, and I'm going to be the receiver.
And we're teaching you the technology by expressing an appreciation. But this is the technology you can use when you have a frustration with someone.
Yep.
And you can, then it'll make any conversation go better. So.
Yeah, and one other thing is we think of it as a vehicle, like a truck. Think of it as a truck. And this is the way the truck works. You can put any cargo on the truck, and it'll go to any market. If the truck doesn't work, you can't get the cargo to market. So this is the truck.
And you've got the sentence stems in your seat, so you'll be using this when you do it with your partner.
If you want to turn in your handout, you can see Mirroring and Appreciation is the title of the exercise.
And it's up on the slide also. So Harville, is this a good time when I could give you an appreciation?
Yes, now is a good time. Thank you.
Well, when we practiced this in the taxi coming over, what popped out in my mind was your tie. I just loved that you wore that tie this morning. I haven't seen it for years. And I just really thought that was a cool tie to wear.
So if I'm getting this, the appreciation you have is the tie I'm wearing, that you looked at it and you hadn't seen it in years, and you're really appreciating the tie. Did I get that?
Yes.
I got that. So is there more about it?
Well, that tie just, in the taxi, it just made me feel exuberant and joyful when I saw it.
So the tie made you feel exuberant and joyful. Am I getting that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there more about that, about the feeling?
Well, when I feel that way, it did remind me of my Uncle Jimmy, because Uncle Jimmy, my favorite uncle, would always wear shirts that were real lively and sort of had like little critters from the farm on them. He lived in Idabel, Oklahoma, and it was like fun trees and flowers, and so it sort of warmed my heart seeing that.
So when you had that feeling, it reminded you of Uncle Jimmy on the farm, who had all these critters and who was fun to be with and around. So it reminded you of a very warm experience and very pleasant experience. Am I getting that? Did I get it? Did I get all of that? So is there more about that?
Well, yeah, and Uncle Jimmy would play with us when we'd go visit.
Okay.
But my father, it was a real contrast to my father, who always wore the business suit and never played with me or any of the kids.
So it reminded you that of your father, who sounds very different. He didn't play with you. He wore business suits, more severe clothing, and didn't play, and you don't have those warm memories with him. Am I getting that?
Right.
Yeah. So is there more about that? No. So let me see if I've got all of it. If I could summarize it, you want to give me an appreciation, and the appreciation is of my tie, which you noticed this morning. And when you saw my tie, you had a strong feeling of exuberance and joy. And when you had that feeling, it triggered a memory of your Uncle Jimmy, who had colorful clothes and had all these animals and lived on a farm. You know, really warm memories of him. And you don't have those memories of your father, who didn't play and wore more severe clothing. Mm-hmm. Did I get all of that?
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me.
Thank you for listening.
You're welcome. Okay. And we also make some sort of physical contact. Couples hug, usually for a minute. If you're not a couple, we have some sort of physical contact, because a neurochemical is released when you make physical contact with somebody you're talking to. Could be either cortisol or endorphins, but you want to be sure that it's endorphins instead of cortisol. So you'll notice that it starts with an appointment. Is now a good time to talk? That's what the sender does.
That really honors people's boundaries, because we're busy, and just because someone's ready to talk doesn't mean you're ready to listen.
And when you don't cross a boundary, you ask if you can, somebody can open themselves, then you regulate and create more safety. Then you make eye contact. And eye contact is a really very important thing to do when you start a conversation. Then you start sending the message, mirroring it, and then summarizing it. So what we'd like to do now is ask you if we could turn on a little light so you all can see each other and we can see you. If you would practice this and pick a person that's sitting next to you, and let's just do it quickly, the two, and then two, and two.
Does anyone not have a partner to do it with?
All of you all are already paired over there.
We really want you to do this and experience it.
There's 4, 6 people here. 2, 4, was that 2, 4, 6, and maybe you could pair with the one on the end there, and then 2, 4, and you pair with the first one on the end over there, and or y'all want to be? Why don't y'all figure it out? You're smart. You're a Google. Pair up with somebody.
And y'all, this feels a little awkward. It's like when you learn to ski, you're on the bunny slope for a little bit, but then it's a very powerful tool to use this in all your relationships. So pretty soon you can go down the double back diamond swishing.
And if you can, it's going to be hard, I think, to turn the chairs all the way. Usually we have people face to face, but turn as much toward the person you're working with as possible. Also decide who's going to start first, and we want yours to go both ways. And we're going to get you started. Okay. So
and raise your hand if you don't have a partner. Okay, here's someone without a partner.
Okay,
so
is there any other person in the room without a partner? Okay, so you're going to partner with him. All right, so now we're all partnered. So I'd like to get you started at the same time. So turn and look at the person, and you all decide quickly who's going to go first. And let me just make that easier by saying the one on the left goes first. And usually it's a different thing. If you were couples, it'd be who talks the least, they go first, and who talks the most, they go second. Decide who's going to go first, and then make eye contact. So you got who's going first. Okay. I'm sorry, don't make eye contact. Make the appointment. It's now a good time. So say to that person, it's now a good time to share an appreciation with you. And you'll be looking at this person. You'll pick out something about that person you appreciate. It's now a good time. And you'll say, of course, yes. Then make eye contact. Just pause. Just make a pause. And then go into and follow either the screen or the thing in your lap on mirroring and appreciation. All right? Get started. Go. And we're going to give you 5 minutes each to do this.
Great.
Okay.
And keep going if you're finishing up, but we're just going to have 2 or 3 of you if you'd like to just share what that was like.
Yeah.
Anything about
just share what happened while I was doing this. Not a question, but an experience.
So a comment.
Any sensations that you had or thoughts?
Yeah, so even though it was, as you said, like
What's
a
that?
little awkward and structured. Hi. Oh gosh, hello. As you said, it was a little awkward and structured, but at the same time, I did feel extremely connected to my partner when we were having the conversations.
Great. Thank you. So it felt a little awkward because of all the structure, but the result was you felt really connected using that. Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Is there more? Yeah.
I think we ended up going farther off script, but it led very naturally into stories about where we came from, and these little prompts ended up like becoming a whole very natural conversation.
Yes. So you went off script a little and shared stories, but then it became a real wonderful conversation. Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Normally, when I'm having a conversation with someone, when they're talking, I'm not necessarily I'm thinking of my next response or something to go along with them. But in the scenario, all I was thinking was, how am I going to repeat back what they said and make sure I absolutely understood it 100%?
Yeah.
So
What is
totally
your
different way
name?
of thinking. Alex.
Okay, Alex, and then there's one more hand, and that'll be it for now, because there's time at the end. But Alex, thank you for being really vulnerable that you noticed that you were going to have to mirror, but then when your partner was talking, you were aware that instead of mirroring, you'd really like to also tell him what you think or edit it, or like you were ready to engage with your thoughts instead of taking the time to mirror. And so that was a real deliberate thing you had to do. Did I get that? Absolutely. Thank you.
Identical observation.
Pardon me?
Same observation.
Same. So Harville, what's that statistic you read about listening that we get 17% accuracy?
13% accuracy.
13%
87%
accuracy.
distortion rate.
Of listening. We think we hear, and that's why it's really important to mirror and say, is that what you said? Because we do this for CEOs of corporations all the time, and they don't know how to mirror or hear what the other people are saying to them.
It's so interesting to see them, oh my God, I got 13% of what I heard. Usually it's that. The other thing we want to say is that the structure is awkward, but it moves into interacting with your cortex, and so that you actually integrate your brain from feeling. When you go into memories, you go into feelings and thoughts, feelings, thoughts, feelings, thoughts. So that when you engage in a structured conversation that moves back and forth between information and emotion, you strengthen the neural pathways in the brain toward non-reactivity and cohesion. So it's an interesting structure. So Helen's going to talk more about that.
So the other thing we said in the taxi this morning, we're going to look up the definition of relationship, because I think most people think, so we'll be more official, that the definition of a relationship is two people. And Harville and I say the definition of a relationship is two people and the space between them. And the focus of the relationship should not be on either person, but on the space between. And how successful you are in your relationships all depend on how safe this space between is. And so,
That's right.
sorry. So there you are. This is really the important thing. And so we prescribe for people what we call a zero negativity process. It's really hard not to end up negative around people around you. Just the look in your eye or the tone of your voice, much less what you say, is often making someone next to you feeling uncomfortable. And we emphasize with the zero negativity process, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You can talk about anything with people. But if you make an appointment, may I, and I'd like to share this, is now a good time. And then there's a way to talk about anything, but it does in a way that isn't received so negatively, because if it's received negatively by that person, they're not going to want to do it. So this is a way to get you what you want. Also taking the time to affirm, bring positive energy into the space between. So we think that mental health is focused on the physics of the within, and I love being the number 2 to Harville, the number 1 physicist, who is really mapping out the science of relationship and the physics of the between. So all of this, Harville also woke up one day and said to me, the couple is the upstream prevention that can prevent all the downriver cleanup. If we can clean up the relationship at home, then the kids don't, get teen pregnancy, chemical dependency, street gangs, and then they do better in school, and then there isn't the breakdown of the economics in the families and in the communities. So if we can just bring this technology really anywhere, all of this, as we're wanting to unleash it, is going to help, we believe, create a more relational culture. We have a culture that just, you all are so rewarded, and me too, and Harville, if we got the best grade in the class, if we won, if we got to the top of the ladder. That's how we're rewarded. Our parents just love us when we do that. Our bosses love us. They give us a reward if we're the best. And we have a world that's all about competition, that can lead to domination, to winner take all, to all sorts of things that really aren't healthy for the world, the human family. And so we think sharing this relational technology is really going to help teach something we all want, which is collaboration, cooperation, the creating of win-wins. So we're really sort of about a relationship revolution.
So the thing that we're focusing on is to discover that the problem in working with couples is conversation. So we had to help them learn how to talk, and then when they learned to talk, they did not have many problems. In fact, the problems were because they couldn't talk. Does that make sense? It's kind of a paradox. And so given that that worked, we knew that then that was a human problem, not just a couple's problem. And so we decided that we would spend the rest of our lives taking a very small thing called Safe Conversation, which you just practiced, in multiple forms and distribute safe conversations globally. We started with Dallas, and we are working on a citywide project in Dallas. We have probably impacted now about 5,000 families. And on Google, YouTube, last year, we did a big project and did multimedia. About 40,000 people watched the workshop on Google, 15,000 at any time on Facebook. And we had about a 20 million numbers for our media footprint. So it started with Dallas, but we now see it going globally. And what we see ourselves doing is doing something that has not been done much in our culture. The culture is focused on individual competency, on being the best you can be, on winning. And we're shifting the focus to relational competency, which we think paradoxically again, that when you're into relational competency, you actually function better as an individual, because neurochemical things happen, muscular things happen, and your immune system works differently when you feel safe in context and rather than feeling challenged and dangerous. So here's basically what this does, and this is the first piece of it. We don't have time to do validation and empathy. But fundamentally, we want to move from having a safe conversation, which is fine anytime anybody wants to talk and needs to talk for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes about a topic, but to take the things that make that structured conversation work and distribute it into all conversations, so that we move from having a safe conversation to making all conversations safe. Then what we do is regulate anxiety. We create safety, and we optimize then the human family and re-experience our true nature, which we think is the felt experience of connecting and the full aliveness that comes with that and the wonder of full aliveness. So honoring boundaries, very important. Anytime we encourage, anytime you talk, to say, it's now a good time to talk about that, instead of just walking in and taking over their cognitive space. It's now a good time to talk about it. Then the mirror says, well, let's see. They said yes. Well, let me see if I got it. Then you mirror accurately. You don't interpret, change, or in any way modify the sin. Accuracy check, very important. Did I get it? Did I get what you said? And if you did, then say, well, is there more about it? So to move to curiosity rather than, usually at that point, we replace the other person with ourselves. We say, so did I get that? Well, let me tell you what I think. No, go to the next step, take a pause and say, is there more about that? And what you'll find is that it's so unusual for that question to be asked that many people will say, well, no. But if you sit with that a minute, just check and see. New things will bubble up, and then the really rich things will start happening. People put things into words that before had just been feelings or thoughts. And then when they get through, do a quick summary. So let me see if I got all that. So you said A, and then you appreciated this, and you felt about that, and that reminded you of something. And what we found is that whether it's a negative or positive interaction, there's always a memory connected to it. That somehow our past is always present in our present. And whether it's a pleasant thing or an unpleasant thing, there's a memory that that experience gets attached to. And if you know that, then your life makes sense. If you don't know that, then you wonder, why in the hell are you behaving that way? It's because something in the past is intruding into the present. So that's basically what we wanted to say, and we now turn it over to you to see what you want to say back to us in terms of thoughts, expressions, questions, and if you have any questions, we'll make up an answer. And I think we have now, how long? About 15 minutes? Okay.
So this works for appreciations. What if you have a conflict? Is the conversation structure the same?
It's structured, and the content becomes this frustration I have with you is, and then you have to mirror that back, and then is there more about that, and then check with the feeling about the frustration. I feel really like I want to kill you. You're a terrible person, and I feel angry and hurt and so forth. So you mirror back the feeling, and then you say, and this frustration, all frustrations are also rooted in memory. And this reminds me of my father who did X or my mother who did Y. And so the person mirrors that back. And there's a more complicated thing. If a behavior actually needs to be changed, that would take a little longer to teach. But there is a process of identifying what new do you need from me that would regulate that frustration for you. So, and what we encourage people, Helen's very good at this, saying, ask for what you want. Every frustration is a wish in disguise. And most of us don't pay attention to the wish, we pay attention to the frustration. Like, you were late, you never do that, you've always done that. And if you ever hear a frustration and just listen to it, you'll hear the wish. I wish you would be on time. I wish you'd call me, before 7. I wish there's a desire. So if we could say, oh boy, I've got this thing going on. I'm really frustrated. What do I want? And then extract from that and go bring that to the person instead of what you don't like. Then that creates more safety, more cohesion, and more connecting. But that's a long process.
In some cases, just the dialogue that we did can address a frustration, but sometimes there is another more structured conversation around, it's called a behavior change request.
Yeah. Is there more?
Well, yeah, I guess that was the question. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be something someone's doing wrong. Maybe you're picking, like, the color of your wall.
Yeah.
One person wants red and one person wants blue.
Right.
So you ask someone to explain their feelings for red, and you say, okay, well, I understand your feelings for red.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But now what?
So what happens when you do the relational, something like safe conversations? If you're in your lower brain, the reptilian brain, have you studied any brain science?
No.
No, okay. 3 parts of reptilian, well, we can even say there's a reptilian brain and the neocortex. And the reptilian brain is fight or flight or freeze, but the neocortex can create win-wins. And just using, I'd really like the bedroom to be blue because that's what I'll really sleep well in. But I really want red because I want to wake up and feel that. And if you just go at it without a structured conversation, you're going to end up in your lower brain. And just saying the sentence stems puts you in the upper brain, like in a mirroring. It puts you up here instead of the intense down here, and you can better solve a problem around purple. Yes, it's got a little blue. It's got a little red. Yes, and it'll be more easy to find that kind of compromise.
Yeah, and what we discovered happens is if you hear me and listen to me and can get my view that I like blue, and you really get it and say, well, it makes sense that you like blue. I don't have to have blue anymore. But if you say blue sucks, I have to have blue. And we learned this, actually, there's a story about when we have 6 children. So one of them, we were walking to school one morning. And no, it was about bedtime. I don't want to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. So we just mirror. So you really don't want to go to bed. You don't want to go to bed. Say more about that. I don't want to go to bed because they're always putting me to bed, and just mirrored everything. And took him by his hand and walked him down the hallway to his bedroom and sat down and hugged him and said goodnight. He said, thank you, Dad, for listening, and went to sleep. So I mirrored him, and his objection dissolved. He just simply wanted to be heard. And we find that's basically what's true. Once we're heard, then we can collaborate and cooperate. If we're not heard, we'll polarize.
All right, thank you.
God made us that way. Don't blame me.
Thanks for
You're
the
supposed to laugh
comment.
at my jokes, and you didn't laugh at that one. I have to point them out everywhere. Anything else? We've got, looks like 10 more minutes. Yes.
So it's easy to imagine that you guys have this like really perfect relationship because you're experts in communication and most of us aren't. I'm just curious if there's still
Wait, would you
Yeah,
say that? Let me see. Would you mirror that back?
So what I hear you say is you expect that we can talk about communication real comfortably because we're real compatible and we have a good relationship, so we can put it out there. Did I get that?
Yeah, and
is there
I'm very
more?
curious to know if there's still issues you guys are still working on, and what does that look like?
Right. So if you have issues, what does it look like? Well, we're condensing an 18-hour workshop, $850. If any of you want to come to our workshop, we'll comp it to any of you at Google.
Yeah.
Just this
In
room.
fact,
We're not
it's
going to
this
do anyone else.
weekend
But I mean,
at
if y'all want to
Omega,
go.
so
Anyway,
you have to
and
hurry.
at that workshop, Harville has given me the permission to tell the story that about 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, our marriage was so bad. We both had so wanted the book to get promoted, but we forgot to do it. And it was so horrible. And Harville would come home and I'd lift up the book cover. Hello, Mr. Marriage. And so I finally got him to go to a therapist. Thank goodness. Aren't there great therapists in New York? Well, we kept firing our therapist. And the last therapist fired us and called us the couple from hell. So we went to the divorce lawyer and we told our kids we were getting a divorce, and we told all of these Imago therapists we were getting a divorce. So it was really horrible. And that's when we brought in zero negativity. And every night before we go to bed, we have a calendar now that we sell to others or give to others. And did I do anything negative? And he will point, and did. And so we do a zero negativity check, and we've transformed our relationship with that. So, yeah,
So-
if we could do it, any relationship can turn it around.
So I think we need to give the formula for a great relationship, and you will, and I want to precede it with the fact that a relationship is a process. It's not a destination. It's a journey. What matters is how do you take the journey, and how do you help each other along. You're partners in the project, not opponents in the project. In a marriage, same thing would happen in any ecosystem. But here's the kind of 3 pieces that we find indispensable for safe, thriving relationships, whether it's couple, families, corporations, congregations, schools. You have to talk without polarizing. And so the structure that we have developed, and took us about 20 years to, it may look simple, but took about 20 years to put together the pieces that would actually work. Those of you who are engineers know it doesn't fall in place. You have to mess with it for a while. So the structured conversation that we demoed, and there's more to that, 2 more pieces to that. And Helen just mentioned zero negativity. What we discovered is you really have to pay attention to the tendency we have to do put downs. And that's what we call negativity. It's like, what? Where'd you get a stupid idea like that? Where did that come from? I can't believe you would say that. Nobody in their right mind would ever say anything like that. Y'all have heard those probably all your life, and none of you have ever engaged in anything like that. I'm sure that Google is too enlightened to engage in that. But that's what most of us do. Those are called put-downs. Put-downs trigger rupture connection. They trigger anxiety, activates cortisol. No endorphins there. So now you go into your defenses. And then the only thing you can do is strategic and be tactical. So if you just decide no put-downs and have a culture, wouldn't it be great if Google had a culture, zero negativity culture here at Google? You may have one, and people are working on that. And then the other thing Helen said, just to emphasize it, is affirming of the person you're talking with. Like, thank you very much. Enjoyed being with you today. I really like being your partner. It was great to have this time with you. I just can't believe I'm working with somebody so smart. Just sentences like that. And remember, you're creating safety. And if you do negative, you create polarization. You want to create safety. Then you have integration, and then you have creativity that doesn't have a defense built into it. Then that experience produces connecting, and that produces full aliveness. And that's what you want. And you can have it with your partner, you can have it in the workplace, you can have it with anybody with whom you have a reliably safe and predictable relationship through a conversational process. So that's all I have. Any other questions? I know we have, okay, a few more minutes. Did you want to add anything to what I just said?
I have a quick question.
Question.
So I'm curious if you have, I read about different attachment styles, and you have like the anxious and the avoidant. I'm curious if you have like an anxious and avoidant, right? And the first question is now a good time to talk? And the person keeps saying no. It's never a good time. There's too much going on.
Yeah.
And obviously the anxious attachment style is like, I want this resolved now, like right now, or I can't do anything else. Not that I speak from experience, but I'm curious.
I was thinking you sound so informed.
I'm curious, how do you put this into practice?
Yeah, we rushed through the process. Are you available now for an appreciation? Harville could have said, actually, I'm in the middle of something, but if he says that, he has to say when he is available, and then at that time, come and get me. So yes.
So it becomes a culture of agreement that in this culture, in this marriage, in this corporate culture, you can say no. But if you say no, you have to say when. And when you say when, you have to show up then. Because if you don't, you reactivate childhood wounds that are subtly done by all families, which is, mommy, 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 let me tell you about the elephant walking down the street. Mommy says, I can't do that right now, later. And later never comes. So the kid comes back, mommy, 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 can't talk to you now, later. After a while, the kid will go away and not ask anymore. Or the kid will escalate until mommy has to talk. And whichever one she responds to, the kid will habituate as that's what you have to do to get attention around here. So in order to change it, there have to be agreements that we are all partners in the project of being together. And therefore, if now's not a good time to talk, that's fine. And tell me when, because I need predictability. If you tell me when, then I'll say fine. Tomorrow, that's great. I just know we'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, you show up. I don't have to come get you. You show up. So you promise you're predictable and reliable. So it has to become a cultural process. So in couplehood, where there's committed partnership, we invite people to consciously commit to a conscious relationship. And you can also do that in non-intimate settings. Am I answering your question?
Thank you.
Is there more?
Is there any last comment or two?
Does that O mean we're done?
Oh, you know what? I will say then in closing, we were talking to a room full of people in Dallas, and they said, who are, quote, it's an advocates committee. It was our first meeting of the advocates committee. And one guy stood up and he said, you all need to find a really big tech company, because, and he's in this business world, but he said, tech companies promised that this technology would strengthen relationships, and in many cases, the opposite has happened. And you all should partner with the tech company and say, I'm the tech company that's going to fulfill the promise, that we're going to really strengthen relationships in the world. So if y'all know of a tech company that might be interested in talking to us, let us know. I thought wasn't that a good idea?
Yeah.
If we're wanting to get it out, isn't that smart?
Yeah. So if I got that, you're saying that. Anyway, so could I give you an appreciation in close?
Okay.
I just want to appreciate what a stunning appearance you have today and what clarity of thought
well, thank you.
in this presentation.
Thank you. I've had a good coach.
You've had a good coach.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
if I got
and
it, you
love
like mine.
working with you because you make me look good. Look good.
Thank you.
And now we're going to close up with, who are we? We are wonderful. I am wonderful. Point to the person. You are wonderful. And that is the truth.
By the way, that changed your neurochemistry. The first 5 minutes you were in the room, sir, that put you into another part of your brain. And as Helen Fisher said, if you listen to her, a whole other set of neurochemicals started flooding through your system instead of cortisol. You had norepinephrine, all sorts of other goodies. So thank you for trusting us.
You are an amazing audience.